Hello, my name is Hakon and welcome back to my channel where today I'm going to talk about something else entirely. And today I have devoted my little chat to say a few points about the concept of hubris as it pertains to Greek tragedy and epic. So if you have read anything by Sophocles, Euripides, Aeschylus, or if you are familiar with the stories of the Odyssey or the Iliad by Homer, which you are because you simply can't not be, because there are so many references to these stories in popular culture as well, that you simply will know something about it. In those cases, you may already be familiar with the concept of hubris, even if you haven't used the term or about it or know exactly what it is. In modern parlance, of course, hubris is used to refer to excessive pride, arrogance, insolence, things that lead to your downfall. That's how excessive they are. But in the classical period, the concept of hubris was a very, very specific one. And it's not just excessive pride and arrogance, but very specifically pride and arrogance against the gods. And I'm going to go say a little bit more about that in a moment. But first of all, there's one more thing another point I want to make about Greek tragedy that lots of people seem to miss. It's not emphasized as much as it needs to be. And the same goes for Homer as well. Now, if you lived in Athens 2,500 years ago and you went to the theater at the annual theater festival, the drama festival, and you watched the latest play by Sophocles, what you're doing is you're not there to be entertained. I'm going to repeat that one more time. You are not there to be entertained. It is a religious ritual. It has some entertainment value, but the main purpose of it is for you to learn something or be reminded of something to do with the contract that exists between people and gods. That is the main purpose of it. And this is also true of stories like the Odyssey. If you know that when you read it, if you think, what does this story tell me about the contract between gods and people, then it's a lot easier to see why it was written and why it's written the way it is and why what happens. And the same is true of the drama as well, because this particular thing, the contract between gods and people, is what drives the entire stories of these classical Greek pieces of literature. Literally, it is, because all these stories are about the contract directly, and also about what happens when the contract is broken, when somebody is trying to break the contract because they either forget or they think that they are above the terms of the contract. And this is where hubris comes in, because hubris very specifically means that a human being, a mortal, it could be someone who's not 100% mortal, someone who has divine ancestry, like Ulysses or Odysseus in the Odyssey. He actually has some gods in his lineage, but he is mortal, and he thinks that he is not always beholden to the gods. He thinks that there are some things that he does where he is putting himself in a place where he sees himself as being better than the gods. For instance, and I'm going to use this as an example now, the Trojan horse. Now, everyone, well, just to recap very quickly, the Odyssey by Homer, most people are familiar with this. It's about how the Greeks, they went to Troy to do the war, and it takes them 10 years from they set out until the war is won. It feels like 2 weeks in the film, I know, but it was 10 years. And then, interestingly, of course, the Odyssey, that is what it's about. It takes them another 10 years to get back home. For Ulysses or Odysseus, it takes him 10 years to get back home, by which time all his men are dead. He is the only one left of his crew and his men who is alive at the end, and he's the only one who's let back home. But why? And the reason is because of hubris. Now, there are several instances of hubris in these Homeric epics, but I'm going to mention one particular one, and that is the Trojan horse. Now, after 10 years of really struggling to defeat Troy, which would have taken just 2 weeks, by the way, if it had meant for something else that happened. I'm not going to go into that right now. Odysseus, he is the one who comes up with the idea for the Trojan horse, or at least so he claims. So he is the one who's the clever one, who then builds a horse, figures that will get them into the city and defeat them. Now, the problem with that is that he didn't get the idea himself. He got the idea from the gods, probably Athena. I can't remember the details now, and whether it, but he didn't. He was nudged in the right direction. He didn't come up with it alone. He was helped. Whether he realizes it or not, it was not his idea and his idea alone. And there's one of the film versions of the Odyssey that I've seen where it actually starts out with the Trojan horse, and you have Ulysses sort of shouting at the sea, saying, "I don't need you gods, because I'm the one who came up with this idea. I am more powerful than you are." And that is the essence of hubris. It's believing that you have power over your own destiny, as opposed to that being in the hands of the gods. And if you do that, which is, by the way, in this Greek tradition, and this and part of that religion, is that is the greatest sin, to believe yourself as a mortal, as a human being, to be in possession of something greater than the gods, whether it's free will, that means that you are more powerful than the gods, or something like that as well. So that was his act of hubris. And of course he had another one as well, where his men ate the cattle of Poseidon, and both those things, of course, they led to the fact that he was not allowed to come back home for another 10 years, because that was part of his punishment for the hubris. So that's one kind of hubris that is in the Homeric epic. So and of course in Sophocles, one play that lots of people might know about is Oedipus Rex, Oedipus the king, Oedipus Rex, whatever you call it. And of course Oedipus of Sigmund Freud complex fame. He is the king who famously killed his father and married his mother. But why did he do that? Now, I'm going to recap that story a little bit now, because this is also essential to understanding hubris. So, in the story, Oedipus's parents, I can't remember the names, and by the way, bear with me because I haven't read this story for 30 years. I do apologize. I should have read it before making this video, but 30 years ago I read the story. Absolutely captivating play. And what happens is Oedipus's real parents, they are a king and a queen, the king and queen of Thebes, I believe, and as good kings and queens do, when a new child is born, you want to know what will their destiny be. So you go to the oracle at Delphi to ask the oracle of Apollo, what is my child's destiny? Will he be a great king? Will he conquer lands? Will he gather riches, etc., etc.? Will he be a good leader? So they ask a question of the oracle, and the oracle says in unusually clear words, actually, not as cryptic and riddly as usual, that he will grow up to kill his father and marry his mother. And of course, his parents are absolutely horrified at this prediction, and they think that now we're gonna prevent that from happening. And that is the act of hubris in this case, of course, is that they are trying, they know their destiny, they realize their destiny, but they say, no, we're not gonna do that destiny. We are going to be masters of our own destiny. Thank you very much. We are going to do something about this. We are going to prevent that from happening. This is the greatest sin you can do against the gods. So what they do is they take Oedipus, they chain his legs, and they leave him out in the wild to be eaten by the animals, because they can't in their hearts just kill him himself, because that would also be a sin actually, and they don't want to do that. It's a more obvious sin to them, I guess. So killing your son, yeah, that's quite bad. But of course, Oedipus survives. He is found by another king, incidentally, who is childless, and he adopts Oedipus and takes him back home. I can't remember where that was now. Anyway, somewhere else in Greece. Doesn't really matter. The principle remains the same. So Oedipus grows up with a new father and a new mother, and he doesn't even know that he came from somewhere else, or that he has other parents that are his biological parents. As far as he's concerned, he is the son of this king and queen. And they forget too that it's not their biological son. They don't even think anything about it. It's just they have adopted him. It's like their own child. Now, this being a king and queen, they too want to know at some point what is going to be the destiny of this son of ours, this prince. And they go to the oracle at Delphi. And the oracle at Delphi repeats exactly the same words as was said to Oedipus's biological parents all those years ago, and says he's going to kill his father and marry his mother. And they too are horrified, because at this point they don't even think that that might be referring to anyone else but themselves. And Oedipus, he is old enough now that he actually gets, I think he is actually present when this prophecy is being said, and he decides to leave because he doesn't want to kill his father. He doesn't want to marry his mother. Why would he? It doesn't make any sense. And he's the most horrified of all. He leaves and he heads towards in the direction of Thebes, which is where his original parents come from. So basically now Oedipus is acting out of the motivation of preventing destiny from happening, just like his parents did. So he is also showing hubris. Okay, so they both show hubris in different ways, but from the same prophecy. So on the way to Thebes, he being a prince in his chariot, of course, high status person, he meets another chariot on the way, and the road is only wide enough for one chariot. One has to go off the road, wait for the other one to pass. Now, the rule is, of course, the one with the higher status is the one that has right of way, and the one with the lower status has to get off the road and let the higher status person pass. The one that comes the other way is Oedipus's biological father, and then you have Oedipus himself. They both don't want to, none of them want to concede the way. Both of them think that they have the highest status. So what happens is there's an altercation, there's a fight. Oedipus kills his biological father, doesn't even realize. So at this point, and this is very interesting as well, at this point, the first part of the prophecy has come true because of Oedipus's real dad trying to prevent it from happening, and then because Oedipus himself tried to prevent it from happening. So those two things together is actually, both those acts of hubris is what actually made the destiny come to pass. This is very interesting, and this is actually because there's two acts of hubris that lead to from the same prophecy that leads to the same result. Is one of the reasons why I think Oedipus Rex is one of the most brilliant plays ever written, because it is so clever that way. And again, remember, this is religious ritual. This is teaching you something very important. Do not, if you are told your destiny, do not try to prevent it from happening, because if you do, that is what will cause it to happen. So there you go. So And then Oedipus, he at some point in his travels, he comes to Thebes, where they are being haunted, troubled by a sphinx, and apparently there has been some kind of competition going on now, because obviously the king is dead, there's just the queen, they're childless, because Oedipus, as you know, that's what their only child, and they set him out in the wild. And the thing is, the one who defeats the sphinx is the one who gets to marry the queen and be king of Thebes. Okay? Oedipus comes there, he defeats the sphinx, he answers the sphinx's riddle, and he marries the queen, which is his biological mother. He doesn't know. She doesn't know. But, of course, this being a proper Greek tragedy, at some point they both realize what has happened. Very important as well. There has to be a reckoning. There has to be a reconciliation or a redemption, and not reconciliation really, but it has to be a redemption or a reckoning. And in this case, it seems that there's absolutely no way that you can get redeemed because of the gravity of the sin committed in this case. So unlike the Odyssey, in the Odyssey, Ulysses gets to go home after he has redeemed himself after 10 years. I'll get back to that. In this case, there is no redemption, and yeah, Oedipus stabs out his own eyes, and does the queen kill herself? I can't remember actually what exactly happens to the queen now, but yes, bad things happen, and it's all because of hubris. Now, in the Odyssey, of course, one of his ways to redeem himself is, well, first of all, the 10 years it takes. That's one part of his punishment. And also, there's towards the end, he is also, because it's Poseidon specifically that has been angered by his hubris, because of, well, first of all, there was the Trojan horse, and then there was the cattle, and then they also slaughtered Polyphemus, the Cyclops, which was a son of Poseidon as well. So they've done several sins against Poseidon. And one of the ways that he has to redeem himself towards the end is he takes an oar from a boat, and he has to go inland so far that he meets people that don't know what an oar is. And then he plants it in the ground, and that's part of his redemption. It's kind of a silly thing, but the thing is that it is a silly thing, because when you think about it, all this hubris thing nonsense is the gods playing with human beings. Because if you think about it, if your destiny is fixed, if the gods are the ones deciding your destiny 100%, you have no free will, then your hubris, your act of defiance against the knowledge, or in spite of the knowledge of that destiny, is also not based on free will. You were actually destined, when you think about it, to have the hubris so that you can do something to try to prevent your destiny from happening, and then by trying to prevent it, you actually caused it to happen, which is what was meant to happen in the first place. So you could read that as the gods are simply playing with people and that, by the way, that is for the gods' entertainment. Because I'm not sure exactly where that is from, but I did read or hear somewhere that it's because the gods are envious of people, because people are mortal. The gods are immortal, and so they get bored, and they have to do stuff to amuse themselves. Whereas people are mortal, and so their lives become more meaningful because they are short, or they have a finite length. And so the gods play with the mortals for their own amusement. There you go. So in any case, the main point is hubris is very specifically, it's the greatest sin against the gods, because you are trying to prevent your destiny from happening. And of course, letting your destiny happen is a very important part of the contract between gods and men. Right. Is that clear? Good. Any questions, leave them in the comments below. And as a bonus thing, I'm going to say one more thing about Homer that I think lots of people don't realize. This is really important in Homer, and actually it's so blatant as well that I'm surprised some people miss it. Now, there's a very specific thing that's happening in Homer. There's a lot of people visiting each other, and when you are a Greek elite, if you are upper class, as it were, a landowner, you are someone who employs people, you have land, etc. You might have dominion over some kind of kingdom, etc., etc. There are very specific rules you have to follow for very specific reasons. Now, if somebody comes up at your door and knocks on it and says, hello, you're not supposed to ask them who they are or what the purpose of their visit is. What you do instead is you take them inside, you give them dry, clean clothes, you feed them, you give them the best food in the house, the best drink in the house, and you give them the best bed in the house. And in the morning, then when they're all settled in after breakfast, then you ask them who they are and what the purpose of their visit is. And this is also part of the contract with the gods, because the thing is, if a stranger comes up at your door and it might look really, really rough, might look like a beggar for all you know, you don't know whether that is a god in disguise or not. And so you should treat him or her, treat this guest as if it were a god in disguise. And the way the gods in disguise want to be treated is to be given a meal, nice clothes, and a good bed. And the thing is that this is part of a kind of social contract as well as a kind of divine contract. And because if you don't treat them nicely, then you are not worthy to have the favor of the gods. So, and the gods might test you on this. That's the thing. You must presume the gods will test you if you do this the correct way. And that's another thing. If you read the Odyssey again, think about that one. Think about that one, and you read the Odyssey, and you will notice it quite a lot, especially in the beginning, that particular thing is happening. So that's I think that's all I wanted to say about hubris, and probably a few more things as well. So yeah, I think I'll leave it there for now, and I hope you enjoyed this and found this interesting, and I hope to see you again in future videos where I talk about something else or show you something else. You never know what you'll get because, well, I just do this as I feel like it. So thank you again, and oh yeah, like, share, comment, subscribe, Patreon, blah, 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 all those things, and goodbye for now.